Hi, I'm Doug Black. I'm editor-in-chief at Inside HPC. And today I'm at Virtual ISC with Hugo Saleh. He is Vice President of Marketing and Business Development at Optical I/O company, Ayar Labs. Hugo, welcome.
Hi, Doug. Great to see you and great to be back on this program with you.
Super. Let's start off with an overview of Ayar Labs and what you offer, why this is important to the HPC industry. Please give us an overview.
Happy to, Doug. At Ayar Labs, we believe that we're at the forefront of a revolution in computing. For decades, chips have been talking to each other using electricity. It's the standard way chips communicate, through copper. You have electrons going between chip to chip, driving the I/O and signaling. And the revolution that's coming is changing that to optics and photonics, in essence using light versus electricity to communicate between different components in a system. We call that optical I/O.
Okay, great. Thanks for that overview. So we've heard you had a recent big, pretty significant announcment with it involving an industry first. Can you tell us about that?
For decades now, we've been seeing the byte to flop ratio in HPC and AI applications roll off. In essence, we as an industry keep putting more and more flops and transistors into the socket, but we've been building these choke points on I/O, whether it's memory I/O or system level I/O or interprocessor I/O. You've been choking off the bandwidth and the ability to transmit information and move it in and out of the socket. If you compare optics to traditional electrical I/O, you can bring in about 100 or 1,000 times more information on a linear edge per millimeter with our technology. And you can also do it at 1/10 of the power. So the value here is obviously you can choose to use that power envelope that you're freeing up in the socket to do more compute. You can choose to use that power envelope to reduce your power consumption. And at the same time, you're bringing in so much more information within that same envelope that you can do more compute, period, which is what HPC and AI is always striving to do. So we made a few announcements that show our maturity and our drive towards those eventualities. The first one is we demonstrated the first terabit per second link. And folks are pretty used to thinking about optical transceivers, the pluggable transceivers that go in the back of servers. Those run at 100 gig, 200 gig, and 400 gig. And we came in 2 weeks ago and announced the first terabit, the equivalent of 10 100 gig transceivers in a single chiplet that's about the size of my pinky nail. And that chiplet gets integrated inside of the socket with the CPU, with the memory, with the GPU, with the FPGA, and escapes that I/O straight out of the package. We also demonstrated the first multi-wavelength source. In our industry, think of the multi-wavelength source as the equivalent to a power supply in a server. Our chips are powered by light versus by electricity. So very dense array of lasers. The module itself puts out 64 different frequencies, 64 different channels of light to power these dense optics that then get co-packaged and integrated inside of the CPU.
Now, moving a bit more over to the corporate side of things, tell us about Ayar's growth internationally.
Today, we're announcing that we've established our first entity outside of the United States in the UK, and we're also looking at different sites within Europe to grow our business within the continent. So expect to see more on that front and how we grow internationally. We also announced this week that we had a few more notable executives joining our company. The first one is Terry Thorne. Terry is the Vice President of Business Development at Ayar Labs, and he comes with decades of experience leading very large accounts. So we're excited about him joining the team. The last person I'll announce is Rory McInerney. Rory joins us from previously at Intel, where he was a Senior Vice President of Engineering. He led, in essence, the development of virtually every data center CPU for nearly a decade coming out of Intel to help us scale not only with our customers and the design win and design in activities with them, but also with supply chain and making sure that we have world-class systems in place to deliver our products.
Okay, well, that leads to my final question, which is, from Ayar, what can we expect to see? If you could give us an idea of what we might be seeing from you over the next 6 to 12 months.
I would say within the next 6 to 12 months, you should see some more announcements coming out about collaborations and projects that we're working on together with other companies. You'll also see quite a bit more technology demonstrations, and I would say technology demonstrations targeted towards HPC and AI that show that low latency, high bandwidth link and what it means to the applications that are running on that technology, which I think, ultimately that's the goal of the entire industry, is how do you accelerate those applications and codes and start, driving that next inflection in Moore's law that seems to have stalled out over the last few years.